Okay, let's try this again. This is moving on from directly after the last video. Well, an hour or so later, I stopped and ran some errands. Now, a previous video in which I sewed the final pleat to the apron, shaped the apron, all of that. Yeah, it's a bit suboptimal, but rather than pick the work apart and do it again, I will shoot another video on that particular chapter, but I'll do it on the next kilt. So here's our next stage. Inner apron's done. Haven't even touched the outer apron yet. But my next stage, I flip it over and I flip through the pleats just to see, if there's some stray yarns that have been sewn in, like caught in, if there's looking for anything that shouldn't be there. Quite frankly, there's my center mark seen from the back. Okay, this all looks good. Oh, there is our first and second pleat, and you can just see the gap where the buttonhole is. So the bottom of the fell, there's the seam. So the bottom of the fell is there. Now again, yellow is marking, white is cutting. Just how I do it. Now I used to cut a 5-inch flap for the buttonhole, but I've recently increased it to 6 or a little bit or thereabouts. Just because, I'm still using a 5-inch wide piece of canvas, which we'll see soon. But by increasing, instead of 5, increasing it to 6, that gives us a little more leeway in the future when it comes to alterations. Because remember, you can lengthen a kilt by shifting the buttonhole and strap up. You can shorten a kilt by shifting the buttonhole and strap down towards the bottom of the kilt. So by adding an inch on the bottom, we're allowing for a little extra leeway in the future. Now 6 comes to just short of the transition there, but that would be silly. So I'm going to mark my cut line there. Now I think, okay, so I'm just going to go back through the pleats. There's my fell. I think my cut. So I'm marking the fell, but I'm also marking where, when I cut out the fish, the scissors, they can't go past that mark. Now, frankly, I'm going to stop doing the yellow because it's bang on the mark, and I'm not going to make that mistake. So I'm just going to put the yellow chalk away. I'm not going to mark the rest of it, but I am going to mark the rest of the cut lines for the fish, the part where we thin out the back. And I put a different magnification on the camera lens this time. Instead of 2 times magnification, it's single. It's 1x. Okay, there we are to the last pleat. Now, what I would caution you to do at this point, because once we pull out the scissors, there's no going back. Before you start cutting, flip the kilt over. Check your measurements one more time. Check the appearance of the pleats. That doesn't have to be redone. Right on. Check the pleats from the inside. I'm looking at them right now. They're all about the same depth. They're all pretty much uniform. There's going to be tiny differences. The cloth, the scale of the set might widen in one spot and then contract again in the future. We've already seen that with the top band. So, yeah, check everything one more time. This is the perfect time for self-doubt because you want to stop and take a look. Because once I unleash these the shears, there's no going back. Now, I don't know if you can see it. There's my seam. Many kilt makers, particularly army kilt makers, and particularly in the past, they left a very small seam allowance, but as they were cutting out as much as they could. And I disagree with that, because it makes it really difficult for these to repair these seams should these seams let go. Because the other thing that would happen, because of the inadequate canvas that they used in the old days, a simple narrow strip about 2 inches wide, not enough of the tension was assumed, was borne by that narrow strip of canvas. And over the years of repairing army kilts, I've lost count of the number where, because the canvas wasn't doing its job, these seams aren't strong in tension. Well, they're strong enough, but the cloth, because the seam allowance was so tight, the cloth would pull apart. It's heartbreaking, because there's really no repairing that. So for that reason, and also because I intend my kilts to last at least one lifetime of the owner. And the owner's figure is going to change over time. The kilt might be inherited by somebody with a different figure. I'm going to leave a fairly generous seam allowance. So I'm going to cut it a red line. So I'm giving it, I'm giving 1.25 inch seam allowance there. I'm using my good sharp shears. These are made by Wilkinson. They're gorgeous things. And they're actually left-handed shears. It's funny, a lifetime of using right-handed shears, I'm slowly having to get used to the luxury of shears that are actually correct for my handedness. Okay. They're also phenomenally sharp. I never really relax with these things, because I could easily cut through the entire kilt and not know it. You know, what's that, 4 or 5 layers there? Okay, so there's my sort of cathedral window shape, and I'm going to give it about 1 inch. And the only thing that I wish I could improve about these is, and I might even take a stone and smooth this tip so that it's sort of so it's a bit rounded, so it doesn't catch on the cloth. Using the shears in the proper way, and every cut is, I'm not going, half cuts. I'll demonstrate it on this second best pair of shears. Instead of doing that, when you do that, when you cut like that, like this, you wear a flat spot, and after a while that becomes a dull spot. In fact, I can see that dull spot in the light. And there are very few people who are competent sharpeners of shears. So I might just have to learn how to do it myself. Yeah. So and so instead of that kind of nibbling stroke, every stroke is a full stroke, and I rest the bottom on the surface. I'm sure there's tutorials out there. Okay, let's just keep cutting away. Come on. Yeah, you can see how that sharp tip, that chisel point tip, kind of snags on the cloth. And I don't rush this, because again, if I make a mistake here, I've just ruined over $1,000 worth of cloth in Canadian funds. What I hope today is my plan today, by the end of the day, is I'd like to achieve having, well, the next stage is the steeking, but after this, let's see if I can get the canvas in. I think I'd be pushing it perhaps a bit. If I was really pouring on the coil, I might be able to get the canvas in and give it a press. But again, I think I'm going to wait until after the first fitting. before I iron this. Wish there was something I could do with this. Too nice to throw away, too small to use anything. I suppose if I was a really dedicated quilter, I could incorporate those into a quilt, but I'm not a quilter. Remember one of my neighbors, actually he was a drummer in the pipe band I used to play with. He'd served, this was with the Army, he'd served, well, he grew up in the Depression, and he remembers, because there was a woolen mill here in town. There aren't any now, I don't think. And they would collect lint, they would collect offcuts like this, the little boys. And when they had enough, they'd take it to the mill. And when they'd found enough of this, the mill would gift them a new woolen blanket. And that might have been during the, I can't remember now, and of course he's long dead, I can't ask him without a Ouija board. I don't know if that was during the Depression or during the war years. It's the sort of thing I would expect for either, okay? Now I'm maintaining my concentration, because this is another one of those boring yet meticulous jobs, because if my attention goes for a minute, and I cut too far down, or I cut through more than one layer of cloth, I've created an immense problem for myself. Just tapping it out like that to make sure I've only got the one. Who'd have thought that all those years ago, like over 60 years ago, when I was in preschool, that the attention that the preschool teacher and the emphasis that the preschool teacher made on doing a neat job with scissors, you know, as you're cutting your craft, who would have thought that would actually turn out to be a relevant life skill? It's funny because being left-handed, there was considerable prejudice. The left-handers were considered to be wrong, cack-handed, as they would say. Now, I was never beaten for being left-handed, but I remember the class ahead of me, you know, the same class ahead of me that got to learn Latin, that got to learn how to use a slide rule, but a left-hander also, wrong, this hand would also get the leather strap across the hand. And I saw them doing, they were really putting their shoulders into it. That was a hard hit. But yeah, they would be beaten across the hand for being left-handed. They changed their policy by my year. I wasn't beaten for being left-handed, but I guess this was the early 60s. So I guess their new policy was, well, I know because it's what they did. They'd say, all right, hands up, who's left-handed? And you'd put your hand up, and the class would look at you funny, you know. And then they'd give you a set of left-handed scissors. But here's the trick. These left-handed scissors didn't have a cutting edge, or at least they are hellaciously dull. So you'd attempt to use these left-handed scissors, and you would just gum the shit out of the paper you were working on. It made a horrible mess. So perhaps their strategy was, because this was the 60s, you know, the time of the Mad Men, you know, the TV series, and the prosperity, and the post-war prosperity, and all the rest of it, and conformism and all that other good stuff. I wonder if they thought that because a good little member of society is always going to strive to do his best and strive to achieve and all of that other happy stuff, maybe they thought that by giving us lousy scissors so you did a rotten job, you tell yourself, nope, I'm going to do better than that. I'm going to teach myself to be right-handed so that I can be successful. Didn't work that way with me. It just taught me to lie. They'd say, who's left-handed? I'd keep my hand down. They'd give me a set of right-handed scissors. I'd use them in my left hand. And I don't think my marks were ever very good, but they did improve from the shit show that I did when I was using a left-handed scissors. Okay, so I've come to the last one. Now here's something I should have done, which I should have shown you first thing, is remember when I marked, because marked this first one, I marked the top where the steeking is going to go. I marked the cut line. What I should have done, and I can't explain why I didn't, because I do it every time, even when I'm not talking to the internet. I also do this with my chalk, right? And the purpose of that is as a warning that I'm not to cut this one the way I cut all of these, right? Don't know why I omitted it, but I caught it now. There it is. I mark that just as a hazard to myself. I'll even mark it further down there, because if I cut this the way I've cut this, major problems. Okay, so there we are. There's my gap. You can see my finger. There's the gap for the buttonhole. So now I'm going to cut this open. The flap. Now there's my white lines. Remember, 6 inches was a little short, but whatever. I just moved it down a bit. And I'm coming up to about, this is a close seam allowance. I'm coming up to about a 1/4 inch where the tip of my shears bumps against the stitching, and I back up ever so slightly. So here is my fold. There's my seam, right? So I can feel it in here. Well, let's use the white. Let's be constant. There's that seam, right? So I'm going to cut like that. And this is my own system. And the reason why I developed it like this, again, well, you'll see it farther along, and you've seen it in some of my other videos, that this will be folded over the canvas. It's planning for the future. It presents a neat appearance. As you see, as we progress with this join between the two canvases, I'll explain why I developed this system and why I consider it superior to all other systems, not going to lie. But what I'm doing is I'm cutting these ones away so that this can fold back. So here we are again, and cut. And again, this is single layer cloth here, so if I cut through that, I am screwed. So let's do this neatly, shall we? Okay, that one's done. Okay, we're getting closer because there's our seam. I think I can do this one just like that. And like that. And where's that seam? That seam is there. I only really have to do it like that. Get in there. There we are. Let's turn that back a hair. And there. And okay, a little bit more. This one's okay, but I'm just going to relieve it. Just to, this one I'm going to go, yay. See, I'm not taking out any more cloth than I have to. But there we are. So starting, see, this one is entirely free. I can turn this over. That one doesn't need cutting at all. This one has a little bit more still. So that later on, there's my buttonhole. But I'm not going to sew the buttonhole so that it gapes like that. I'm going to overlap the buttonhole. And you can see I can overlap it about the width of that black that you see there. So I'm going to do it about like so. So that when a person's wearing a kilt and he's got it on tight, because that's the only way to have it on, we don't see a gap there. It would be very, very hard to see because there's not a lot of it. But we don't want to see a gap with the shirt peeking through when he's wearing the kilt. So we're going to give it that little bit of overlap. That also means that our canvas here and the canvas for the front apron are going to be overlapped and sandwiched in between, and we're going to be able to sew those together. And by so doing, we're going to create the strongest join possible between these two pieces of canvas. Because as you've heard me say elsewhere in my other videos, I find most other canvas jobs that I've seen disappointing. It'll be a thin strip of canvas. And let's just lay all this back. It'll be a thin strip of canvas about, let's say, 3 fingers wide. And it'll be from there to there. So it basically connects these two top buckles. But that's not a wide enough footprint, as it were, to assume to take on all of the tension that's posed when you put on the kilt. So you'll have a thin strip put on, which is inadequate. And then, as often as not, they'll put in a larger piece, and it'll be tailor's canvas, which makes no sense, because tailor's canvas, it's a mixture of, well, it can be several mixtures. It can be all high, it can all be all horsehair. It can be goat hair mixed with pure cotton, any number of things. And also it can be dressed with sort of a sizing to make it stiff. The purpose of a tailor's canvas, for tailor's canvas rather, is to add shape to a garment, like the front panel of a coat or such like that. You don't need any shaping here because this is under tension and laid against the body. There's absolutely no need for tailor's canvas. If someone puts tailor canvas in here, they are what I call a cargo kilt maker. They're going through the steps, but they don't understand the underlying principles, and they're just doubling down on their mistake. So there, changed my mind. You can't. So instead of that narrow strip that doesn't do enough, and that broader piece that frankly does nothing, because on top of everything else it's almost always inadequately pressed or attached. You'll see it later as I install it, but there's going to be one piece of canvas that goes from the buttonhole, one piece, all the way to the strap, or the buckle, the strap on the inner apron, and it's going to be a solid piece. But we'll get into that later when I actually get onto that stage. So there we are. We are ready for steeking. I'm going to take another short break because I feel like a drink of water. So I'm just setting this up. And then in the next stage, I'll show you how I do the steeking. Well, goodness knows what I can do with this. I guess I'll get rid of it. Cheers, bye.